Welcome to Command Control Power, a weekly podcast hosted by 3 certified members of the Apple Consultants Network, drawing from nearly half a century of combined experience. We talk shop, interview vendors and colleagues, and share what we've learned while operating our technology consulting practices. This is Joe Saponari of SciMac, and my 2 co-hosts are Jerry Zigmont of MacWorks and Sam Valencia of the HCS Technology Group. We also offer a weekly email newsletter which includes show notes for each episode. Learn more at commandcontrolpower.com. And thanks for listening. This episode of Command Control Power is brought to you commercial-free and is made possible by our Patreon sponsors. You can help bring more commercial-free episodes by going to patreon.com/CMDCTRLPWR and supporting the show with a monthly pledge. Thank you for your support of Command Control Power. I literally had that same freaking password conversation. All 3 phone calls I had today, like 3 long calls. I'm dealing with passwords every single time. Like,
oh man, yeah. The other one I've been getting, I don't know if you've been getting this, is people telling us that they're having trouble with their browser, and then you get on the phone with them and they're running El Capitan. It's like a whole bunch of people came out of the woodwork running El Cap.
So I had a trip I'd been planning. I was getting ready to head out of town, wrapping up some work stuff. I was actually, as I mentioned, sometimes at a coffee shop, but I came home after having great internet for a few hours at the coffee shop, get home ready to just dive right back into work. And, I get the message, the Wi-Fi network, my Wi-Fi network name, is not connected to the internet. Do you want to use your personal hotspot instead or use cellular data? This is great timing. So, all right, let me just power cycle the equipment. What's the first thing you try?
Yeah, let me just ask, what are you using these days for your location right now for Wi-Fi?
Yeah, so it's just the stuff that came with the place, basically. This is actually part of my annoyance. So we have great service. We have fiber to the house, and it's really fast. It's supposedly, I think it's like a gigabit up and down. I should just do a test right now. I'm on a Wi-Fi, and so what's the worst that could happen here? But I might as well just run a speed test right now while we're recording.
And is your ISP something like, because you're in Colorado, like Grizzly Bear Services right. Or something like that?
Rocky what is the internet? Yeah, no, no, it's CenturyLink. I mean, I think they're like a pretty widely known massive company.
Okay.
I mean, it turns out they have great service here. I was really impressed. It's like $65 a month, and it's tremendously fast speeds. I mean, on Wi-Fi, I'm getting, as I'm speaking to you right now. Hopefully, the latency is not dragging, but I'm getting 252 megabits down and over 70 up. And I did a test. I wonder if I took a picture of this, and it was like insanely fast. I was just so impressed. It was like in the hundreds of megabits up and down. And, for that price, I mean, I was just really impressed compared with back in Connecticut, Online, now Altice, they just have not been great.
Why is that, though? Now, you're on an M1, so why wouldn't your speeds be higher?
With Wi-Fi? Well, so that's part of the kind of frustration. So I find my internet's down. I power cycle the equipment, comes back up. I reconnect. There's some time that goes by. You want to really wait a few minutes before turning it back on. You've got to wait for it to boot back up. Meanwhile, I'm losing productivity here. I'm getting frustrated. Reconnect, still not connected to the internet. And I'm now I'm really frustrated. Why is my internet down, right? Check the bill. There's no problem there. I remembered the day before I saw somebody with a blue baseball hat on. They were walking past the house right outside, and I just didn't think much of it. But I'm I wonder if that was a service technician, in retrospect. So that's kind of in the back of my head. So I call him up and I start troubleshooting. Now we're half hour, 45 minutes into the whole thing. Get them on the phone. They're helping me troubleshoot it, and they say, "Do you have fiber internet?" I don't know. You tell me. You're looking at my account. I mean, I'm technical. I know what I have, but most people aren't going to be yes, I have fiber internet. I don't know. Most people would say yes, whether it's true or not. They don't know what they're talking about. So it's just funny that they're asking me. But I'm that's a clue also. This tech tries to gain access to my equipment, tries to reset stuff, tries to, issue some commands, whatever. Nothing's really working. He's kind of looking into it further. He's escalating it. And he comes back and he says, okay, I know what the issue is. So you had a connection that was wired directly to your apartment from the pole, so to speak. And it never should have been done that way. And when the previous tenant here, who I kind of inherited the lease from, I just kept the equipment. I switched over the service to my name. But when they came to switch the service, I asked them, could they replace the equipment? I want new equipment. I just didn't want to deal with I don't know how old this stuff is. It looks a little bit it's a little dusty, maybe a little janky, as I say. So can I just have new equipment? So the guy's well, we don't have to. I mean, this was like mid-COVID and stuff too. So I'm like, I don't want to push the guy to just be here longer than he has to be. But, I said, I'd appreciate it because I really depend on it. And of course, everybody depends on it. But, I'm literally in tech. I think that I can say I depend on technology to do my job, and reliable technology. I don't want to be dealing with like power cycling, routers and stuff in my own home. I asked him, nicely if he would do it, and he agreed to. Then the tech says, okay, you're all set. I'm like, that was really fast. I'm like thinking that's a little too good to be true. But he's kind of like, halfway out the door. I'm like, all right, thank you. I really appreciate it. So I go look. The equipment was not new.
This is when you had it installed. We're talking about when you first had it.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah. It was months ago. I mean, it was like, 6, 7, 8 months ago, something like that.
This is not the blue hat guy.
Right, exactly. So the guy who installed it or really switched the service to my name said, okay, you're all set. I switched it out, blah, 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 after agreeing to give me new equipment. And then, after he left and I looked at the equipment, it was the same exact stuff. I was 100% sure. I mean, it was like, smudged and, had like some handwriting on it. It was like, this is the same equipment.
What?
You didn't switch the equipment. Yeah. So I was a little frustrated, but, it was working and I just let it go. So fast forward, now I'm on the phone with the company and saying my internet's not working. It just, I don't know when it went down, but like it's not working as of this afternoon. And they said, okay, I see what happened here. So someone else in the building, there's 4 units in this house that I live in, 4 apartments. Someone else had just connected their service the day before. When the tech came out to connect their service, they were like, this isn't supposed to be connected this way. So they take the line from the pole to some box, I guess it's like an ONT outside, and they run that connection from that box outside over phone lines, over copper phone lines to each individual unit. And the guy on the phone actually said something about DSL, and I'm like, is that the right term? Because I think of DSL as like 1 megabit, and like really like asynchronous speeds, like slow upload, that kind of thing.
Right,
like really old technology. Maybe it's a generic term that's been kind of upfitted for the present. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's running over plain old copper telephone lines, as far as I can tell. And, at least from that box outside to the modem inside. Like I said, I tested it. It was incredibly fast once they fixed it. So the guy on the phone confirms all this and says, yeah, like, that never should have been hooked up that way in the first place, like where you were the one unit that had the line run directly to their apartment. And when the tech yesterday came and like, hooked up somebody else, they just like fixed it, which had the unfortunate side effect of just taking out my internet. So I was pretty frustrated, but I did kind of pressure them a little bit saying like, I'm leaving, I can't wait until like next week for an appointment. And I don't want to wait until I come back to get an appointment, like to have to deal with that. It's on my to-do list now. Before I can get online, I have to have them come out. So I just asked them if there's any way they could come the next day, which was like the day we were leaving. And sure enough, they agreed to. And he said, normally we have 8-hour windows. I wish I could schedule an 8-hour window with my client. Yeah, I'll call you sometime between 9 and 5. He said, I'll make sure it's a 4-hour window. I was like, okay, I really appreciate that. And if there's anything you could do to put a note in there to say, can you please make it the first or second call, that would really help me. And sure enough, they did. I mean, they got here like an hour into their day or whatever. It was like probably 9 something. Came out and they fixed it. I mean, he brought the new equipment in. Luckily, the phone line part was already hooked up. So, I mean, he literally just had to like plug into the right port on that box that was also right next to the old direct line. And, with in this case, it's a new modem, I think, and got that all hooked up. So now I think they left me the same router. I'm just going to replace the router and probably just keep their modem. I'm back online, I'm happy to say.
What about all that hooking up of the new tenant? They had to undo that and redo it again?
I guess what they had already put in place for the new tenant was take the line from the street to the box outside. And that box apparently already had phone lines running to each unit. So, they got hooked up through that standard method. Like there's a line from the street to this box. And then like from that box, it goes to like 4 phone lines, one for each unit. So they were hooked up properly to one of those phone lines, as of the day before. And when they came to fix it for me, thankfully, they didn't have to like run a new phone line or anything. There was already a line from that box to my unit. So it was really strange, like why they would have done it differently originally. And in the way they had done it, that would have meant like only I could have internet from that company. So it was just, it didn't make any sense. Oh, but I did make a note here. So it gets 700 to 800 megabits per second in both directions with a 4 millisecond ping. And that's over the copper phone line. So I don't know how it works, but I was like very impressed with that result.
That's crazy symmetrical service, because I'm getting a gigabit down from Comcast right now and 40 up. So I'm getting at the Dream Machine, when I test it, I'm getting about 857, ping time of about 18 milliseconds, 857 down and about 40 up, which is what they're saying, up to a gigabit down and 40 up. But that's insane both ways.
The symmetrical part is fantastic. And you know, there's some clients that would really benefit from that, like who host servers still, you know, on premises, and who like can't get better than what you just mentioned. I mean, like residential internet, you know, is like 40, 50 megabits upload. That's what some of our, you know, business customers are getting too. And it's kind of a joke, you know, and like now, I don't know if you've encountered this company yet, and I don't know how widespread they are, so I don't know how relevant this will be to other listeners, but Go NetSpeed, have you encountered them yet?
I have not.
Sam, you may have heard of this company, Go NetSpeed. Does that ring a bell yet? Do you have any clients using them yet?
It does not ring a bell.
Interesting. Okay, so I had a client move from Norwalk to Fairfield, Connecticut. And when he moved, he said, "Oh, I got this like flyer for this company or whatever, Go NetSpeed." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know, like whatever, you know, they sounds like a joke or so. I don't know, like, you know, you get these solicitations and you don't think very highly of it." So, but he did his research, he looked into it, and sure enough, he took the plunge. And he's a business, you know, customer with a server on premises, and so I was like, you know, let's just be careful here. But if they're delivering what they promise, like it sounds pretty decent. They offer symmetrical internet. I guess it's fiber based. Standard package is 150 megabits upload and download, $50 a month flat fee, no taxes or fees. Free installation, of course, and all that. Now, the only catch is like it's not available in all areas. And so if you have people in your area that would want this, they like everybody can just kind of put in a request. And if there's enough people in the neighborhood, they're like literally, you know, pulling fiber, as far as I understand it. So that was my first experience with it just a few months ago. And then I had a couple of friends recently mention that they've signed up, you know, just for residential service, and everybody has been very happy with it. So I'm psyched about that being an option for us now, because I'm kind of tired of dealing with, again, like we're talking about Optimum Online, but everybody's got their favorite cable provider to bash, you know, in various markets. Optimum Online around us, and now like I guess they've been bought by Altice. Number one, like their speeds have been terrible for a long time, and I read something recently that they are intending to actually lower the upload speeds in some cases. So that's another disconcerting fact. And then their equipment has gotten worse, you know, lately with these like all-in-one, you know, cable box / cable modem kind of devices. It's just been harder to work with them, and they haven't been providing the kind of speed for the value. So I'm looking forward to new options.
Company that you were talking about just now, Joe, are they like an MVNO? They don't own their own network, and they're just riding on the backbone of...
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, so what you're describing, I think, is more relevant to like cell providers.
Service.
Yeah, exactly. So
MVNO, mobile, what is it, virtual network
operator.
Operator, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds right. Although I can't imagine physically like pulling fiber. I don't know how that works, you know, but I thought that they were doing that. I thought that they were coming into various neighborhoods and actually like laying new cable. I mean, maybe there's conduits that they share with other people. I don't know, but yeah, they're fantastic. So right now they're in several counties in Connecticut, and then they're in a couple of counties in Pennsylvania. Just to answer my own question about how widespread they are.
I already signed up, actually.
Nice.
While you're talking, I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Because Optimum is just so crappy.
Exactly. And I've been a big like supporter, you know, promoter of Optimum for a long time. Like they were the best for a while, you know, as far as like speed goes and reliability. And I like their equipment. They're standalone modem, you know, as like a standalone device. They're easy to work with, but that's just all changed in the last, you know, few years. So I'm looking forward to this great alternative.
Yeah, up here in Durham, the only fiber we got is Raisin Bran.
Yo!
Nice. Bazinga!
Wow.
Was that because of your age bracket, Jerry, or where you live?
A little bit of both. So. You know, there's actually a cereal I'm looking here online called Nature's Path brand cereal. PATH, Nature's Path. I think it's a little too graphic for me.
Oh man!
We're browsing for fiber cereal at that moment. That wasn't just
Sam's signing up for internet service, and I'm
we're all sidebarring stuff.
So speaking of routers, I was at a business client. They have a protected network, and they have 5 IPs coming out of this Comcast Business Gateway. What I have a tough time doing is provisioning new Macs, because in order for me to get online at this client, I need to go through this portal that's generated by WatchGuard. And it's an authentication portal. And you log in either as a student or a faculty member, and then it gives you your level of internet access. So there's just no way like a Mac out of the box can do like zero config or do any kind of mobile device management using something like Adigy. So I needed really a kind of like a staging access point. So I said, terrific. I'll just plug in an Eero in the main server room where this router sits, because they got 5 APs, and I'll try to get this Eero onto an available IP. Try as I might, working with an Eero technician over the phone, because I've got the Eero installer thing. So you have a special number you can call, and you can talk to somebody who's quite knowledgeable and quite helpful. There was no way that we could get this Eero to communicate, to get an outside communication going. I did the manual configuration of a static IP, because you can do that through the Eero app. Just banged away on it for over an hour with an Eero technician. And then I was thinking, well, maybe I've got like a bum Eero, like maybe there's something wrong with it. So I got another Eero Pro, a brand new one, and came back a couple days later, same darn thing. So I said, well, the heck with this. And I ordered up a Nighthawk router, from Amazon. And it was a cheap one. I think I got it from the Amazon warehouse store. Go in with a Nighthawk router. And now the thing that Netgear has is they try to make these routers consumer or residential end friendly. So a lot of things just auto config by themselves. And I was back into a same situation again, where I was provisioning the Nighthawk router correctly, putting in the static IP, everything was perfect, and I just could not get it to communicate. I had a router laying around in my office from a couple years ago. I think that was also a Netgear, but a much more dumbed down version of the network, and that worked flawlessly. Huh. So go figure.
Really?
Yeah, the simplification of a lot of these Eeros or other routers out of the box has just made it impossible for you to do any kind of more advanced configuration and just have it work. Because this was a Comcast business class gateway, say that 3 times fast, I don't think it was doing any sort of MAC address cloning or anything like that, because you could, in theory, have plugged in 5 routers off of this gateway and worked with 5 different IPs. So go figure.
So with that, Jerry, was it like double natting situation? Why would I get it why those auto configs can sometimes be troublesome, especially if you have to manually configure something on the WAN side. But interesting that you can just plug something in. What exactly did you have to change on the manual side to make it connect?
Well, that's interesting. Joe was talking about these Altice routers. So like if you're setting up a Dream machine, you really can't modify those Altice routers in any configuration. You just have to set it up in a double NAT situation. And generally speaking, that works pretty well. And so when I was working with the Eero technician to try to get it to work, we left it double natted, and just there was nothing we could do. He said, I could see it sort of logs in, but it doesn't seem like it can get any communication back to it. A router from a couple of years ago worked just fine.
Yeah, that's the crazy part.
That's the tell right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned UDM and Altice, because I have one of those coming up next week, so I'm a little concerned about that too. This was actually another Optimum issue where, first of all, the client upgraded their network without telling us, so there you go. And so then they, of course, we get the emergency email. Optimum was here, they connected everything, and now everything's down. And the guy left.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, okay, that's par for the course pretty much with these guys. Yeah. So I'm trying to walk her through some stuff. And what was happening, and this is what's concerning me, Jerry, is they had just a typical USG, not the Pro or anything, but just the small square USG. And it wasn't working like it used to. So the guy had to come back, and he plugged in their new modem directly into the switch, and then everything fired up online. So everything was working. So presumably it is giving out an internal IP scheme, and the double NAT with the USG just simply wasn't working in its previous capacity. But in theory, if they rebooted the USG and it was set for not a static, it was set for dynamic, it should have picked it up.
Right.
But so that's concerning to me, because now I have to go check this out. We have not seen this in person yet. And we took the opportunity to tell them to upgrade to a UDM. So that's what I was going to come in with. But with Jerry's story and with their inability to connect the USG, I'm a little concerned.
Well, the little hiccup with the Altice that happens is that they're using a 192.168 schema, and that's out of the box. That's what the UDM uses. Yeah, you got to circumvent that first and get the UDM at least connecting properly.
There's limited configuration you can do on the Altice, but can you change the LAN IP scheme?
Yeah, I was just going to respond to that because I think you can, but then like it'll just like change back sometimes. It's like one of those things. It's like you can save the configuration, but I get the impression they just like flash it remotely or something once in a while, so it'll just like revert. There's no way to navigate this except trial and error, which is extremely frustrating. Because like you go there. I had this happen with a client who. One day they were like, Optimum's here and they want to upgrade us to Altice. I'm like, run away. No. So and then like subsequently they got upgraded to Altice anyway. And I don't know if it was on that visit or a future, another follow-up visit. And this was a whole freaking debacle because it just ruined everything. And we had to like spend tons of time with it. This was the crazy part. The technician installed the Altice equipment after the client told them they didn't want it. Technician had already done it apparently, and then figured they could convince the client or whatever. So they did that and then never added it to the Optimum account. So when we're calling Optimum, they're telling us they don't have Altice equipment. Yes, they do. I have the photo from the client right now who's standing there, and it's a picture of your stupid Altice cable box thing, And so then I went back to my notes from when the client called and said, like, this is what happened. And I gave Optimum the date and time of the call and the details. And they're like, oh, I found the notes from the technician. It does say they upgraded to Altice, but it never got added to the system as an Altice account or something. I don't know. There's some weird thing on the back end. So it was this huge debacle. So we accommodated this stupid Altice thing after like convincing Optimum that the client actually did have Altice. Because we're setting up with Eero, I forget what we changed in the Altice, which they did support. I forget if it was the IP schema or putting it in bridge mode, maybe something like that. And then it eventually reset itself. So we had to go back again and just end up going to like I forget if we went to a double NAT in that case or actually had them rip out the Altice and go back to like a standard modem. But
yeah, the double NAT does work, but that's the only way it'll work.
Right, which for a business is not great because back in the day, if you wanted VPN, that would be kind of the one thing that was pretty much a deal breaker to avoid double NAT if you want to have a VPN into the network. But there's probably other things, though, where that's just not great.
I hesitate to think of what's going on at that. This is a church client, so they kind of do things on their own thought process. They do have a need for VPN as well. So this could be them backing themselves into a corner where we're going to have to get them out of it now. I'll keep you guys posted on that nightmare as that goes. This brought up something else in my mind where we had a customer in Westport, Connecticut that moved offices and they had, the space built out, and we had worked with an electrical contractor to have them run wires. And we pre-configured all the Unify equipment and had it set up and boxed and sent back to them and said, hey, and we already listed on the floor plans the mount points and everything. And they did a great job. They mounted everything exactly as designed. They rack mounted all the switches and the gateway. But when the owner came to the office, they said, everything's offline. I can't get online. I can't do anything. And I'm like, well, are the blue lights on the APs? He's like, yes. And I look in their portal and everything's offline. So I'm like, well, crap. Now I'll have to go in on a Saturday because first off, it was Friday afternoon and I wasn't jumping the gun for him. And second of all, I really didn't want to see him. So I was trying to avoid that and go in on a Saturday. He's like, I'll leave you the key. I'm like, perfect. I really don't want to deal with you. So I go in. What I find is there are two modems, presumably one for phone and a second one, which was just left sitting on a shelf. And they had plugged the equipment into the phone modem, which the equipment we had configured was set up for a static IP and this other modem was dynamic. So, of course, it wasn't getting online. So I take this modem that the contractor had left there. I turn it on. I plug it in. I have the coax into it. The network comes up online. I'm plugged into the switch. I can now get out. I'm like, well, great. That was stupid. That was an oversight. But then I noticed the APs are still not coming online and there's no Wi-Fi that I can connect to. And on top of this, he didn't cross-connect the switch to the UDM Pro. So not only did he connected to the wrong modem, but this guy connected to didn't cross-connect the switch to the UDM. So that was my visit on a Saturday. That was a lovely time, but thankfully I was able to sort that out pretty quickly.
But see, this is why you get the big money, Sam, because, those guys, they do what they do. We need somebody like you in there to figure this stuff out.
Like us, yeah. Someone who's actually done this before and has seen that before.
Circling back to what Joe said, you're on site, and the only way you can resolve a lot of these issues with modems cooperating nicely with these routers or gateways that we put in is trial and error. And sometimes you're flailing away and an hour goes by, hour two. Eventually you get it working. That time you have to eat. It's always really a tough one.
Yeah, it's the worst. And with the trial and error with like new equipment from a vendor, you just can't rely on what they say. So if they're like, sure, you just enable bridge mode, click here, and then it gets clobbered, and then like, well, I'll never attempt that again, because I don't want to have to go back and refix it. But you're going to make that mistake just by definition, because like you don't know until the stuff doesn't work and you learn those lessons. But it's like there's really no way around that. Especially when you're dealing with stuff fairly new and you don't even have any info from colleagues. Like, we talk to each other. We sometimes share best practices, but you just have to learn the hard way sometimes. And that's the part that's really frustrating. And, you're lucky if the client is understanding and you can invoice them for at least most of that. But yeah, with internet stuff, it's really the worst, where you're trying to interface with some vendor that's just, they look at it as a commodity. They're just like, how many installs can we get in one day? If a few of them don't work, it's okay. They just make it up in volume, but we have to deal with the actual clients freaking out. And then it goes down a second time and you're like, now you're really behind the eight ball. So that part's really frustrating. Speaking of frustrating glitches that we're finding out on the front lines here, have you guys been tracking the Big Sur upgrade issues?
What have you seen out in the field?
So I have my notes from the first time we saw this was August 3rd or thereabouts. Let me see if maybe it was even actually a little bit prior to that. Yeah, it was like the end of July. We quote unquote recommended upgrading to Big Sur. We said, okay, we can support this now. Like, this was like in the middle of the summer at some point when we started saying, okay, Big Sur is like ready for prime time. I forget which update it was at that point, 11.3 maybe, something like that. And it was, it was working reliably. Software compatibility was there, no major issues. So we're ready to start supporting it. We try not to lag too far behind Apple's marketing. In this case, months into Big Sur. I mean, you're talking like almost more than halfway to the next Mac OS. So we better start supporting it at some point. And of course, we had been supporting Big Sur for clients who had it pre-installed, which we still do. We just started to say like, yeah, we can also support you upgrading to Big Sur. So we recommended to a client, we're ready to have you upgrade. We had them, on our managed services plan. So we had them in Altice. So we pushed out these two upgrades, and we do them. We kind of, have more of a concierge service, and we pushed out through Altice, but we kind of manage the upgrade and then like follow up after the upgrade is complete. And hopefully it works. Asterisk, see the rest of the story. But once the upgrade is successful, you go in, just make sure all the accounts are still happy and the software is all updated and whatever, just kind of like white glove service. So we recommend it. We do the first one, no problem. We do the second one, the machine is bricked. And we're like, this is on our watch. This is like, our recommendation. We oversaw the upgrade and we bricked our machine. Like, what is going wrong? So we tried everything. And this was all remote. So we ended up having to have the client ship us the machine. We couldn't get her back up and running, and we didn't want to just like nuke and pave. She had a backup, of course, but we didn't want to just like nuke the system and hope for the best with Time Machine. So we had her ship everything to us, and she was very understanding. So this all got fixed at that time by ultimately nuking and paving. There was nothing really else we could do. So fast forward, we have another issue sometime like in mid-August with another, in this case, a client had attempted, luckily it wasn't our recommendation, but a client had attempted to upgrade to Big Sur on their own machine and called us and said, it's stuck at this progress bar. So this was the same symptom. In this original instance, it was less than a minute remaining. I mean, there's tons of things you can make fun of Microsoft for, but Apple's less than a minute remaining is like a pretty classic, ridiculous, estimate. And so this is like less than a minute remaining. When you're telling a client to wait a little bit longer, like what's reasonable to say? If the screen says less than a minute remaining, like, do you tell a client, give it an hour? I mean, that sounds absurd, but like we're telling them to wait a little bit longer. Eventually you just get stuck and you're like, I don't know, let's try force restarting, nothing works. So we have this, second client now bring in the iMac. In one case, they had Adigy. In the other case, they didn't. In one case, it was a MacBook Pro. In the other case, it was an iMac. We couldn't really find any common denominator. I actually thought that the upgrade path was different, and I might have notes on this, but I didn't double check it. Supposedly, though, so fast forward now, we resolved that again, nuke and pave, restore from backup. Just popped up on my radar earlier this week, and I think it first started to become widely known just last week. And there's going to be, I think, a Mr. Macintosh post about this, mrmacintosh.com, about what to do when this happens. The symptom is, the upgrade just fails. It ends at this less than a minute remaining. If you force reboot, you can basically try the installation again, and it fails in the same place. It just never finishes. And so now this is, if you're on the MacAdmins Slack, you can check out the Mojave-Upgrade-Problem channel. So supposedly, and again, I'm not sure if I can confirm this with my instances of this, but it's specifically happening if you're trying to upgrade from Mojave to Big Sur. And people have had this problem with even older Big Sur installers, but certainly up to the present. And a couple people have engaged with Apple Enterprise support, and they're getting some more direct support there. But Apple can't really figure it out. I mean, they're finding out what the symptoms are, and it's something about migrating the accounts and whatever, but no solution yet. So yeah, be very careful. This is a PSA basically. Don't upgrade to Big Sur, especially from Mojave. Supposedly, if you do need to get a machine, well, I mean, obviously you kind of want to upgrade from Mojave because you want to have the security coverage of only the previous two macOS versions, Catalina and Big Sur. You can go from Mojave to Catalina and then to Big Sur. Or, in a few cases more recently, since we got scared off of the Big Sur upgrade, we've just upgraded people to Catalina if they were on Mojave. But that's my PSA. Be really careful with the Big Sur upgrade.
I'm thinking about this, Joe, and last week we had a customer that my partner Jay worked with, and they had this issue. I had not seen this before. Got stuck at, around the less than a minute remaining situation. And he was freaking out. I was tied up with something, and they had tried forcibly rebooting, trying all this stuff, and they ended up having to nuke and pave. So that was likely the situation that everyone else has been seeing. I just didn't put two and two together until you described the story.
It's pretty sad to me, that Apple can have just an upgrade that's just sitting out there that they're offering to Mojave users that's going to brick their machine. Very poor QA. I mean, I don't know how something like this slips through. I'm surprised that it's a surprise to Apple. I mean, I've seen it at least in those two cases. I think there was actually a third case I'm not thinking of right now, but I'm pretty sure we've seen it. I know we've seen it at least two times, maybe three or more. You've seen it, and then there's tons of chatter on the MacAdmin Slack about it. So it's not exactly rare. We don't see every issue. A lot of times, some Apple thing is, a big to-do online, and we don't actually see the issue with our clients. In this case, for us to encounter it so many times, it's very surprising that Apple hasn't figured it out or obviously hopefully preempted it. This actually slipped through into production, and it's been there for at least a few, maybe for all the Big Sur upgraders. Goes back to standard criticism of Apple's quality assurance lately. I'd probably just say stick with Catalina then. I mean, obviously there's some benefits to Big Sur, some new features and things, but for a lot of people, the main goal is just security. Because again, I don't know if we have any new info, but Mojave is not getting security updates, and there's there's a known bug that affected Catalina and Big Sur that was fixed in security updates. I don't know why that wouldn't have also affected Mojave. I don't know if there's any more information about that, but the 0-click-0 day that came out recently. So I mean, there was a Safari update for Mojave, and maybe that fixed it, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it fixed a WebKit framework that was, some core problem for this bug. But it's surprising to me. I think we talked about it previously that Apple hasn't updated Mojave. I mean, up until now, they had been supporting the current and prior to macOS versions. Monterey is not out yet as we record. So it's strange that they're glossing over the fact that Mojave is still technically supposed to be supported with security updates according to their previous policy, but we're in this limbo because we're about to release Monterey, which would then negate the need to support Mojave in theory. I don't know why they can't just support Mojave. It's still fine.
Come on, got to upgrade, Joe.
I'm on Big Sur, man. Like this is the most up to date I've been in a long time. But yeah, I mean, thankfully my new machine shipped with it. So
yeah, good old M1, and it'll be out of date by
it'll be obsolete pretty soon. Yeah.
Speaking of upgrading, I think now is the time to tell both of you two babies that I've got a M1 MacBook Air that I didn't pay for. Actually,
I actually saw the truck.
Yeah. Well, no, I swiped it off of one of my clients, but it's on loan to me just to get me through this hump. Somewhere around August, I had to abandon ship on my 2015 MacBook Pro.
Yeah, that's a turnaround. I feel like, the last time we talked about this, you were ranking Sam for having for needing the M1, and you were like, "Oh, great, this 2015 is great."
I was wondering why he went silent the last few days.
The only crazy thing I've noticed, and I don't know if you guys have noticed it in using this Mac, is that if I switch from power and go off onto Wi-Fi for a little bit and I come back in and I plug it back in, sometimes the screen will unexpectedly go dark. It's not shutting down, and then I can't get it to wake up. And my workaround for this is I use Alfred, which is a productivity app for Mac OS, but they also have an iOS companion that you can get for free, and it'll allow you to, through Wi-Fi, connect your device, your iMac or whatever you want. And one of the buttons is to restart it. So I've been sometimes restarting it via iOS using this Alfred app. But it's the craziest thing. It'll just go black. And sometimes if I unplug the power and plug it back in and tap the space bar wildly, I can get it to light up again. But has this happened to you guys at all?
Not to me.
Yeah, I don't think so. There's been a couple times where there's been a little hesitation, like where I see the touch bar light up, but the screen's not up yet, and I'm holding my breath, and then like it will come up. There seems to be a performance issue if I don't restart for a while. It's almost like it goes for like, it's like it'll go for like a week, 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, 100% performance. There's no like staggering, there's nothing, and then like all of a sudden I'll start to see a lag. And then that's when it's like, okay, I know I've got to restart pretty soon and to get back full performance. But
have you had an audio issue where sometimes you have to reboot it to get the audio to come back?
No, I don't think so.
I got a good one here,
though, man. I don't know. Really? Okay, you're having that issue?
Yeah. I mean, a reboot will do it, or from the terminal.
Jerry, are you there? Jerry, I can't hear you.
I have to do a kill all core audio from the terminal, and that'll bring it back too. It's a good product. 1 minute remaining.
I mean,
that's our show title, by the way.
Yeah. Less than a minute remaining. Hardware wise, I think it's like fantastic. By the time I upgraded, I had no problem with Big Sur. I just wonder about you, Jerry, because I think you install a lot of stuff that might have comorbidities with this hardware.
Check your login items.
Yeah.
Well, I want to avoid viruses, and I use MacKeeper, and it does a really nice job with my machine. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Jerry does his voices of customers of all kinds.
Am I on the cloud?
Joe spins his deeply detailed yarns all the time.
I have a whole story about this.
Sam is on